Welcome back to the Boaters Podcast. I believe this is episode 2, isn't it?
This is the second episode.
All right. How's it going, Aaron?
It's going phenomenal.
That's good.
I'm surprised that we had so many people talking about that free boat.
What's so many people?
I don't know how to put a number on it, but there's actually quite a few.
There were a few. There were a few people interested.
There's actually quite a few emails that we got. We got more emails than I thought we would get, and there's a ton of comments. But obviously, some people, I think we might have made it a little confusing as like it's a contest or something, where it's not. It's whoever comes and takes this boat can have it. It has a free, clean title.
Well, I mean, it's not like we're giving out our address, so I guess it is kind of a contest. You kind of have to get chosen.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You know, not necessarily a contest like a raffle, but just see one and well, he looks like he's interested and he's close by. Come on and get it.
Yep. There is one person I'm waiting to answer back on the email. He was the first person to ask for it, and so I told him he could have it. It unfortunately does need a trailer, so that's going to take us some time to swap the trailers out. If you've ever seen videos of people trying to transfer a trailer in their yard, it's kind of a task of trimming it up, trimming it down, putting it on blocks, and bunking up the boat to get it off the trailer, and then sliding the trailer out and sliding a new trailer under it. But outside of that, no, it's going to be a first come, first serve.
Yeah.
Not really a contest. Just if you want it, you can have it.
Yeah. You can have this free boat. That's not so free. Free things are never free.
No, they're not. They need a lot of work. And
it's not the greatest boat, but it's nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, there is a little bit of bubbling on the transom gel coat, but where the bracket is, where that goes on, it's solid.
Yeah, where the
Your
bracket
motor's not going to
is.
fall off.
No.
You're not going to ride this boat out for 20 years.
No, you're definitely
it's gonna
not.
have some problems, but like we said, if you got a motor lying around, this will be a good thing to just chuck it on there and get going. For cheap.
Yep. Get floating for cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a 40-year-old boat, so it's going to have all the same 40-year-old problems that a 40-year-old boat has, but it'll get you floating. You can go fishing.
Yeah.
Other than that, we've got a ton of comments too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff people want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard sifting through all of them. Picking a couple.
Yeah, it is.
We got a few put out here.
What's the first one that we got?
You want to start with, what are your thoughts on the ABYC standards and how much do you try to abide by them?
Well, I mean, I guess my thoughts would be the ABYC standards are pretty common sense for most of them. It's not like I've sat down and read the book of the ABYC book.
Is there a book? Is there like a book?
Oh yeah.
How big is the book? I don't think I've ever seen it.
There's hundreds of pages of literature that the ABYC has come out with. So to be, fully versed in all that stuff is.
So what all even is in the ABYC? Like how big of a range? Is it just every aspect of boating? Because all I really ever get out of the ABYC is like wiring, color codes and stuff.
Yeah, I think most of it's pretty common sense. I mean, once you kind of deal with so many boats, you kind of get, used to the different standards of how boats are made, and everybody kind of adheres to these same standards, so they become kind of common practice and knowledge.
Right.
But I mean, like wire colors and hoses and different routings of stuff. Those are the main things that people have to deal with. Like you said, the wire colors. I mean,
that's the big one.
Yeah.
For me.
Yep.
Just because it definitely makes it easier when diagnosing things. You're not trying to chase down a wire Whereas instead you could just look and, the blue wire is remote for the amp, or the pink wire is the fuel sender wire. And, you don't have to trace a wire.
Right.
You can just see it and you got it. It makes diagnosing quicker, easier.
Yeah, the system that wire's, dealing with, whether that be a fuel sender or remote, or, if it's a yellow or black, it's a ground. If it's red, it's power. I mean, if it's got a tracer, it's been switched. It's...
If it's a pump, it's like brown for the most part. Bilge pumps, live wells, they're mostly brown, aren't they?
Most of the bilge pumps are brown, and a lot of live wells can be brown. But once you get into that, the pumps and the lights and stuff, then it gets more into a brand, brand deal. Like different brands use different wires with tracers. So, and a lot of brands now are building their own harnesses, like Boston Whaler and some of these other companies that they actually make harnesses to go from the front to the back. Because it's a production line boat, they'll have the harnesses built. They'll build the boat in a section, and this section will get this harness put in there with a big plug on the end of it, little Deutsch connector or whatever, a 14 pin round or 20 pin or whatever it is.
Right.
And that'll be in there. So when they assemble the boat, this section comes in with this section, and boom, they got, this harness got wired up in the dash, and then this section was wired through the boat over here. So when they put the two together, they just click it together and boom, and everything's wired up already.
Yeah. It kind of, I don't like seeing those harnesses through rigging tubes as much, because it makes it harder to pull a new wire. Not every boat is courteous enough. Not every person who's worked on a boat is courteous enough to leave a string or a rope in the rigging tube. So, having to run a snake in there, or even trying to modify that harness is just not fun when you could just pull a wire right through, like normal.
Yeah. Neither of us are ABYC certified, so I don't really...
No. But we try to abide by them as much as possible.
Yeah, they kind of set the industry standard, and we kind of adhere to industry standards.
There was also a question on what kind of pressure washer PSI did we have there? It was 1700, right?
Yeah, that was just an electric 1700 PSI pressure washer. Yeah. I'm not sure what brand it was.
They were asking what kind of pressure would cause damage. I don't know.
Well, the newer the boat, the more pressure you can have, and the older the boat. I guess it all depends more on the build quality of the boat, like the gel coat and how old it is, how thick it is, how well it was put together. Older boats, obviously, the gel coat gets drier. Any voids in the glass or the gel coat, it'll start chipping. And you definitely don't want to be going up there with like 3, 4, 5,000 PSI of water, because you're just going to blast a bunch of the gel coat and the non-skid, and you're just going to chip it into pieces. But, for the most part, 1700, you can get pretty close and not, blow anything out. Like if you hit an air pocket or something, you're not going to start chipping away at the gel coat.
What's the most you've ever used? Like, have you ever caused damage to a boat with a pressure washer?
Yeah, especially when you're doing bottom paint, like cleaning the bottoms off. If the boat sat for a long time in the water, and most of the time you need a high pressure 3,000-4,000 psi to get a lot of that growth off the bottom of the boat. Once the growth, you pull the boat out of the water, as soon as air hits that growth, that stuff turns rock solid, and you almost got to scrape or sand it off. So hitting it with the pressure washer while it's still wet to get that stuff off the bottom, usually, we use a few thousand PSI, not like 5,000, but, 2, 3, sometimes a 4. And that can actually... eat into the gel coat. That growth will eat into the gel coat. So as you blow it off, it'll chip. And then older boats, if it's real thin, some of the Parkers and Grady Whites and stuff, I've seen those chip pretty around the water line where that growth line is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've chipped some out. I mean, they're old. I've watched people get inside their boat and try to pressure wash stuff out and blow holes all through the inside of the boat. It's like, what are you doing? Like, it's unnecessary.
After the first one, you'd think like, maybe I should.
Yeah, maybe I should back off a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
We could go into stories of some of the most difficult problems that we've had to solve and how you solve them. I know you were working on, a 37 CV that had some kind of electrical issue with the NMEA. What was wrong with it?
That one, yeah, this week we were actually on a CV working on a NMEA 2000 communication issue. He kept getting an autopilot error. It was losing the heading sensor.
Right.
And so the autopilot was throwing the heading sensor code on the MFD, the, multifunction display, or, the display
right
on the dash. And it ended up being two of the T-fittings in the backbone had high resistance in them. And also there was an issue with the Seakeeper and resistance in that line. And that was throwing off the data communication between the autopilot. And I mean, when you get a NMEA 2000, which is the network that all the components talk to, all your electronics, your stereos, stuff like that they all talk to each other on the NMEA 2000 network. Mm-hmm. And as you put more devices on there, all these devices are sending data here, there, here, and there. And it's a structured line of, a terminator, which is 120 ohms, and a terminator, which is another 120 ohms. And that kind of is the network. So from this one to this one is basically your network. And in between there, anything can talk. So if you take this off here, this terminator, and put it in the middle, it shortens that network to there. And it's kind of like a buffer at the end that kind of filters out and, lets data know, okay, this is the end and this is the end. Mm-hmm. And when troubleshooting those NMEA 2000 networks, you basically are looking for that resistor. So the resistance is the data line, and then there's 12 volts that's on the backbone that powers it up. As long as you've got power on the backbone, then most of the time it's either high resistance or not enough resistance on the line for the things to talk to each other. So in diagnosing that one, all I did was check the resistor, made sure it was 120, and it was. And then I put that on the backbone, and I went from one device to the next all the way down the line, checking for that 120 ohms. So I'd unplug something, check it. If I got the terminator, then I knew it was good. Mm-hmm. So I got through 8 different things, all the displays, the stereo, the VHF, all that stuff was all good. And when I got to another, one of the T fittings, it jumped up to 132. So it was, way higher than
right
118, 119, 120, right around there where it normally is. And which is very common on NMEA installations, people just zip tie the things to stuff. And these T's are supposed to be straight. Right. They're supposed to stay straight and just have drops off of them and stay like that. Well, people zip tie them tight and they bend like this and are like this. And so these things were bent up into where they were mounted, and 2 of them, they're these cheap Chinese T's that just some off-brand T's. They were both adding 5-7 ohms of resistance onto that data line. So whenever things were trying to talk, because it was extra resistance, they couldn't talk to each other, which is making the.
So there was 2 bad T's.
Yep.
Okay. See, I thought. So what did the Seakeeper have to do with it?
Well, then the Seakeeper added to that. So you had those 2 that were bad, whereas with those, I mean, because you can have a fluctuation of resistance to a point. I mean, the longer it goes, the worse it's going to get. The shorter it is, you can have a lot higher resistance because it's only going a short distance. Mm-hmm. There's not much voltage drop. But if you bring that out to, 100, 150 feet, you're going to have a lot more voltage drop across that line than you would, the short line. Mm-hmm. So the bigger the network, the more it matters of having precise resistance on that line.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it being tricky. I was only a part of like the beginning half of that job, and I remember it being tricky where, the autopilot computer wasn't communicating with the MFD. It kept losing the signal, and you call Garmin or anybody, and they've got their own troubleshooting steps, assuming everything in the NMEA network is good. So you got to be careful with that. It could lead you down thinking that something else entirely is bad, and
when it's not,
costing a lot of money because it's everything was leading to that computer. The CCU for the autopilot being bad.
Yeah, course compass or something like that. Course compass unit or.
And since his boat was steer by wire, that's a $2,500 computer. That's that's a big hit there. Whereas knowing about checking the resistances and everything on the NMEA network saved that guy from making a big expensive mistake. Because if you would have followed regular troubleshooting guides, it would have told you 100% that computer's bad.
Replace
it. Yeah, and really, it just ended up being 2 little T connectors. What does a T connector cost? Like $10, $15,
$20, something, whatever.
And I heard you had to put that Seakeeper on its own network, though. You built like a separate backbone for it.
Yeah, so we just added another backbone to get it off of there, which, I mean, really, that's not the true fix. No. But for now, it was what we had to do just so he could go out and use the boat and have everything work. So we just, because of the resistance between the T's, once I got the T's out of there, it like would work and then it would like not work. So it would be random. So once I separated the Seakeeper and put it on its own network, then that, it could deal with that resistance until he can, deal with the Seakeeper issue.
Right, because what do you think it was causing the resistance for the Seakeeper? Is it the NMEA 2000 wire itself, or does it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the NMEA 2000 wire because I tested that wire. It was something in the Seakeeper harness, but that Seakeeper is from 2018 and is getting it's 5 years old, which isn't that old, but at the same time, the location where it was
probably out of warranty too, so that's
he's probably got warranty on it, and
I'm saying he's probably out of warranty. 5 years old, right? No,
I don't know. I don't know what the Seakeeper's warranty is.
So basically, that would have to get diagnosed and fixed.
Yeah, I think it's inside the harness
to go back onto the old network
from where the Seakeeper is talking to the network in that harness that's inside the Seakeeper.
Because you're supposed to be able to control the Seakeeper from the Garmin and.
Yeah, and it's got its own controller too.
Yeah, so it'll still work on a separate network. It's got its own controller. But to reintegrate it, you gotta figure out what's causing that
resistance and get that resistance down because it was just bogging down the network.
At least it got figured out because that guy was eager to take the boat out, and he was like, "Man, I can't. This autopilot's throwing off the whole." The heading and everything, it's just not.
Well, every 2 minutes he's getting an alarm going, lost heading sensor, lost heading sensor, lost. Even when he wasn't even trying to use the autopilot, it was just continually seeing it, not seeing it, seeing it, not seeing it, and it was just coming and going and coming and going, which can be hard to diagnose when it's not happening all the time. Right. So. I think, going back to the question, that was just kind of an example of something that we've dealt with in the recent. But any kind of diagnostics, I think, normally what you want to do is you want to isolate the problem. So like if you're working on an engine and you think you've got an engine problem, whereas you've got a boat problem, you want to separate your engine from the boat and, try and run the components individually. So you would separate your engine from the boat and try and run the engine by itself. Mm-hmm. And if everything works fine with the engine by itself, you got a boat issue.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. If you separate the engine from the boat and the engine's still messing up, it's an isolated problem with the engine.
Yeah.
Same thing with the electronics. If you think you got a problem with the autopilot, isolate the autopilot from all the other stuff that's in the boat and see if it works like it should when it's on its own deal.
Right.
And if it does, it's in your network. Mm-hmm. And then, most of those data, diagnosing a CAN bus is the same as it is with most of the brands where, CAN buses came out in like the 70s or 80s on cars. So it's not like it's new technology, and it's pretty much the same. It's just a data line, and you just go from the end to the other end and test this, and go one component at a time until you find the one that's, you plug this in and everything goes haywire. Now you've isolated your issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that actually reminds me of, you brought up separating the boat from the engine. This guy has a question about his 2016 Suzuki 200 4-stroke, and he says it runs fine up to 3,000, but trying to go wide open, it'll bog and fall back down to like 2 to 3. He said, my mechanic replaced the VST and still the same problem. He then replaced the high pressure fuel pump, still the same problem. Do you have any idea what might be causing the issue? I think going straight for the VST was a little jump in the gun there, but this is one of those where I think we have a video out on,
we do,
on testing that, separating the boat from the engine, where you can, run it on an auxiliary tank. Mm-hmm. And if it,
that'd be the first thing you do.
Right. That'd be the easiest thing to do. Just carry a little red tank onto the boat and
plug it straight into the engine.
Plug her in and take it out. If the engine runs fine with that, then, you've got some kind of either a restriction or a leak somewhere in the boat. It's not, you don't have an engine problem, so the VST would have never fixed anything anyway.
It's also kind of weird. He said
high pressure. Yeah. Isn't the high pressure pump in the VST?
Yeah. So he replaced the VST and then went back and pulled the new VST off the boat and then replaced the high pressure pump inside the new VST. Are we reading that right?
Spending a lot of money for chasing a ghost, because
that's a very expensive component. And then not to mention most VSTs, you're going to spend a lot of time, pulling the VST off, opening it all the way up, putting the new pump in there and putting it out. But why would you pull a VST off and then put a new one on there and then pull it back off and put a new pump inside the new,
it doesn't really make any sense. No.
Maybe we're missing some information or something. I don't know. But
couldn't tell you. But
I would try isolating the engine, like you said, put it on an auxiliary tank and run it and see, with fuel going straight to the fuel filter on the engine. So that way it's running on the auxiliary tank, 6-gallon tank that you've got properly vented and all that good stuff. And if it runs fine like that, then it's not an engine problem, it's a boat problem. Mm-hmm. And then at that point in time, like you said, you can take and put a piece of clear hose right at the engine and see if there's bubbles or if it's squeezing the prime bulb flat or what it could be, and then work back through each fuel hose all the way back to the pickup and pull the pickup out of the tank. And unless he doesn't have a fuel problem, and maybe some engines the trim sensor will limit it, but I don't know. 2016, I don't know if the 2016 Suzuki, I don't know if they limit RPM on like a bad trim sensor or something. If it's like an electrical issue.
I'm not super familiar with everything Suzuki, but a lot of the Mercuries, like I think I did run into a problem with the 150 Merc that the trim sensor was always, it was reading too high. It was stuck or something, and it would limit the engine. Anytime you try to go wide open, it'd cut you back because it thinks you're trimmed out of the water. There's a lot of different. Yeah. It's something that you can give as much advice as you want over, the phone or the internet, but you'd have to be there looking at each individual thing because it could even be ignition, I think, right?
Yeah, there's all kinds of like little like tells that you don't get when you're just talking with someone. Whereas like when you're looking at something, you could see a physical like sign of something, like, oh, look at that dust or that dirt or that, the video that we got coming out next about those HPDIs, the one spark plug that was completely white, those are little things that.
Yeah, that was a similar kind of thing. He was saying that it runs okay for the first little bit, and then as he tried to go out, he could tell that he was like either down a cylinder or something. I don't remember how he was describing it, but he was down a cylinder. It wasn't sparking at all. So, so yeah, it could be a multitude of things when it comes to running issues like that. But just starting with basic things first. Don't just, for your sake, don't start spending all that money on a VST thinking it'll fix it because it's a common fix. It's not worth throwing parts at it. Go through step by step and diagnose the system.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about very expensive components like an entire VST. I mean, that can get pretty expensive.
Yeah, I've seen it happen. I've seen there was that one rental boat when we were down in the marina. Replaced the VSTs on Mercury V8s, no less, which are
those FSMs,
which are not, or the FSMs, Mercury, but replaced the FSMs, and those are not easy to replace. You got to take the boat out of the water to get the chaps and do all that on those V8s, and it ended up being the engine fuel filter,
boat fuel filters.
Yeah. No, it was the ones on the
corner.
You're
right.
The ones on the corner in the back there, they were clogged.
Yep.
And he spent, how much is an FSM for a V8? It's not cheap. $1,000 or something.
Yeah, like $1,000, I want to say.
$1,200. I thought they were pretty expensive.
So you're at $2,400 right there.
Not to mention having to pull the boat out of the water, and it's a rental boat, so you're not getting.
Pull it out on the trailer. So all the time there's a couple hours there to get it to the ramp, get it on the trailer, get it back to the house, put the chaps. You're probably 3 hours an engine.
Yeah.
Plus all the clamps and stuff. So you're a day and a half on this.
It ain't worth it.
Yeah.
Just start throwing expensive parts at something.
Yeah.
What else do you want to?
What's the next one?
About? I think we've got one on. Well, another one with some kind of diagnosis. This guy said he's got a Pleasure Craft Marine motor inboard 302 Ford. Said got a new raw water pump, new risers, but the left side riser would run hot. Nobody could figure it out. I actually don't know a whole lot about inboards, but I think you do. I think you.
I don't know that much about them, but he said there's one side's running hot, like one riser.
Yeah, he said he's got a new water pump, new risers, but the left side riser runs hot. Nobody could figure it out.
Well,
did you hit ground?
Yeah, I mean, if they got, or dirt daubers or something like that got up in there, and if you sucked up a bunch of sand or some dirt or got something in there, if one side is running hot and then the other side, I mean, and are we sure it's the riser and not the actual head of the engine, like that side of the engine's getting hot? I mean, there could be sand or dirt or something packed up into the head of that side of the engine,
right,
where it's not cooling the cylinders properly. Your water passages inside the cylinder head, or even around the block, or just that side of the engine. Maybe there's some dirt or some sand stuck up in one of those water passages. You definitely, it sounds, if it's overheating on one side, then you've got a blockage somewhere in your cooling system that's not flowing properly.
Yeah.
Probably have to take the risers back off and then, look down at it, put some water to it and push water through the cooling system to see if water's flowing freely out of there or if it's barely trickling out, or, start that sounds like that could get kind of expensive, because now you're talking about disassembling stuff to check and ensure that your cooling passages are clear. Because that's the next step there. If you've already replaced your risers and your manifolds and all that, your exhaust manifolds, and one side's overheating, there's a block in one of the water passages, and it's not getting cooling water to that side, or not enough.
Right.
It's not enough water flow to.
Right. Also, how hot is it running? Like, how much hotter than the other side is it running? Is it, affecting, is it throwing codes? Like,
is it throwing an overheat alarm, or what,
how bad is it?
How bad is it? Has anybody taken a temp gun and actually, checked each cylinder, like going, on that manifold, they all, the riser comes up and then the manifold comes out, and each one has its own, like channel. So, going from one to the other and making sure, the front half of the engine on the port side is getting hot, 20 degrees hotter than the back half, then, somewhere in here you got to start taking stuff apart and looking for blockage in the water passages.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to give I guess we can give suggestions, but it's kind of hard to give a diagnosis without.
Yeah, no, we're not
looking at something.
You can't really diagnose something like that, because you have to do things. If it's doing this, then you need to go check this, and this. Well, and then before you can go beyond that, you've got to go do the X, Y, and Z.
Well, next guy has a question on steering. I guess it's C-Star hydraulic steering. And he says, is it normal to have just a tiny bit of play? You mentioned quarter turn. I don't even think it's that much, but offshore, I noticed that in rough waters, the motors will move slightly back and forth on their own. Is any amount of that normal? If not, I'll re-bleed and check everything out again.
To a point. To a point, you can have some play on the engines, especially when you're going from loaded to unloaded on the back of the, you go over a wave in the back of the boat. These engines are in the water loaded, and you come off the back of a wave, they can shift a little bit, but you want to make sure that those collars, so where the steering cylinder is and it hooks up to the engine, there's a collar on one side and spacers there. That collar screws out, which tightens it tightens that cylinder to the engine. You want to make sure that that's tight and not allowing a shift there. Like, physically look at that cylinder, make sure that the cylinder itself's not going back mechanically compared to whether it's hydraulically, shifting.
Yeah, because he says he's got not even a quarter turn of play. I'm assuming after bleeding it and just checking it, stationary. Yeah. So it doesn't seem like it's hydraulic play. But I have seen, even from the factory, like we went and inspected a 26 yellowfin that was, almost brand new, had like 50 hours on the motors, and it was like a 2021, but both the engines were playing a little bit, and it was because from the factory they didn't tighten down that collar that has the little set screw in it. So the whole assembly, the whole ram really was
rocking back and
forth. Yeah. So it was, I'd check that, like you said, because if you've got less than a quarter turn of play after bleeding, then that's
pretty full.
That's pretty full. Yeah. That's pretty good.
You're gonna have a little bit of play in there, because you're passing hydraulic fluid. So you're turning this way and it's making the fluid flow like this, and then when you go the other way, it reverses and goes back the other way. So there is a point in between going this way and this way where you turn this way and it's pushing. When you go back the other way, there's going to be a little play before it starts moving that flow back the other way. So if you've got an eighth of a turn of play, that's pretty normal. And the older the system, the more wear and play you're going to have too. So
he also did say it was in rough waters that they move slightly back and forth. So, anything really, those motors are never perfectly stationary.
Yeah.
Like if you're out there in rough waters, then
it's a lot of force.
Yeah, they'll be moving a little bit. It should be normal.
Yeah, you just don't want the whole engine going slamming back and forth.
No, I think that wouldn't be a question on YouTube. You had a problem on that one. If it's just moving a tiny little bit, check those collars to see if they're loose. But other than that, you should be fine. And next one. This guy says, I'm seeing a lot of bay boats swapping to dual 300s versus single 450s, saying performance is much better, but not sure how they measure performance. Now, back to that 26 yellowfin that I went and looked at. It was, 26-foot bay boat with twin, I think the Mercury V6s, the 225s, which those are some bad motors. I mean,
right.
Great power to weight ratio and torquey little things, but it's I don't know, because I haven't experienced too many bay boats to know the performance differences. But I remember the police boat from the Keys having the twin. I think it was the same boat, 26 yellowfin with the twin V8s, the 300s, and that thing was a rocket ship.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know, having I guess double the torque. Because really, the V8s are torquey. Having double the torque just pushes that thing so quickly. It got up on plane like that. Because you start getting into arguments about power versus weight. And twin 300s is 600 horse versus a single 450 and half the weight. You're at half the weight and you're only missing out on 150 horse. So what kind of performance are they talking about? I feel like top speed, you'll probably do better with the single 450.
I mean, also the stress on the engine, it's kind of the old saying of no replacement for displacement. So if you got, the single 450, you got 8 cylinders, whereas twin 300s, you've got 16 cylinders.
Right.
So you've got a lot more power there.
There's less individual load on the engines.
Yeah. So
it'll last longer. I mean, it's double the cost, though.
It is double the cost.
Service, so that's a downside.
The 450s is also a supercharged engine, so
less reliable.
It's making, I don't know about less reliable, but it definitely, you're adding a supercharger to get that power over the naturally aspirated 300s. So I mean, it's kind of not even really in much of an argument, basically, because I guess what I'm trying to say is that you've got 2 V8s with 16 cylinders compared to a single 8-cylinder with same block. I mean, the 450's got the same cylinder bore as the V8s, doesn't it?
I think it does.
I think they're both 5.7s, 5.3s.
I can't remember all the differences. It's got the supercharger, but I think the valve train. No, I couldn't tell you the exact differences between the NAs and the 450.
I'll just keep talking.
Yeah, go ahead and Google that up. But I don't know. It's also better, I think, having the twins, because if one of them breaks down, you've still got that other engine to get you back. Whereas if you got a single,
it's a 4.6 liter.
It's a 4.6 liter. What's the 300? Isn't it a 4.6?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both 4.6s. Yeah, so it's the same motor. It's just slap a supercharger and change a couple of components around, like maybe injectors.
But again, you're trying to, you're going from, 16 4.6 liter cylinders to 8 4.6 liter with a supercharger. So yeah, it is 150 horsepower more, obviously.
I think you worded that wrong. 16 4.6 liter cylinders?
Yeah. 2 V8s, 16 cylinders.
Right. But I'm sorry. The way you made it sound is like each cylinder is 4.6 liters. Like that's a that's a honker right there, dude. You got that motor on the back of your going to the moon.
Yeah.
If it'll float.
But and then comparing the V8 to the L6 or the V6, the V6 is a 3.4. So yeah, I was messed up because I was thinking about the V10 now, and the V10 I think is a 5.3 in that what's the 600? 6.7?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is a 6.7. See?
Yeah, it's a 5.7 for the V10.
You were thinking 5.3 for the Yamaha, man.
Yeah, the Yamaha.
You're getting all mixed up around here, dude.
There's too many engines, dude. I can't keep them all straight.
And then what's the XTO? That's
the XTO is a 5.7. No, 5.6.
5.6. Oh man, too many different individual ones to remember. Let's see if you got that one right.
Yeah. The 425 is a 5.6. The old 350s V8 were 5.3s. 200s a 2.8. The 150s a 1.7.
Mercury V8
L6 is a 2.6. The V8's a 4.3. The V4 is a 3.4.
4.3. Didn't we just say it was 4.6? The V8 Mercury?
Too many.
I think we're getting off topic though, because he's saying he's not sure how they measure performance. They say performance is much better, but how are they measuring performance when it comes to dual 300s versus a single 450?
I don't know how they're doing the performance, because to me, I mean, obviously the twin 300s, if the budget allows for that, I would always go for those. Because that single 450, it's the same concept in my mind. It's the same concept of these big boats that load up the back of the engine, the back of the boat with the L6 Verado. You're talking about a 2.6 liter supercharged engine. Yeah, they make 350, 400 horsepower, but it's a small cylinder. Whereas these V8s and these V10s and these V12s and all that, you're talking about a big cylinder. The displacement, there's no replacement for displacement. So the bigger the displacement, the more load you're going to be able to push. So without the stress. So, these big, heavy 28,000 pound, 40 foot boat that you're pushing through the water with those little cylinders with the supercharger, so you can get that horsepower up. It just doesn't work the same. I mean, you can do that in a car because a car doesn't weigh that much. And you got, these Porsches and Lamborghinis, they got small cylinders because they're not moving a heavy load. That's why you use diesels for weight. You want that power to be able to move that weight.
Right.
So, if you supercharge the engine to get the horsepower, that's fine. Up until a certain weight, once you get so heavy, you're just bogging that motor down because it's going to produce all that horsepower, but it's still
working harder.
It's working
to make that horsepower.
Well, not that. It's working harder to move the weight.
Right.
It's trying to move more than it really should be. Whereas the two, you add 2 300s. That's a lot of power and displacement to push, the 26-foot boat, which it's going to be able to handle that weight. There's going to be there's no boat in front of it because it's just got so much power.
I see what you mean in terms of the reliability of the engines too, and how hard they're working. But you've also got double the weight. So how does that affect fuel consumption? Maybe performance.
Well, at the same time, to go the same speed, so performance-wise, if you're trying to go the same speed, let's say you're cruising at 35, 40 miles an hour, that 450 is going to be running a lot more RPM, so you're going to be burning a lot more fuel. I mean, obviously, 2 engines are going to burn more.
Or what if they mean performance is just outright top speed? Are the twins going to be faster than A single with double the weight?
I would imagine. I mean, you're adding drag because you're adding another lower unit and another prop in the water, but at the same time, your engine's producing a lot more. You can prop it a lot differently. Mm-hmm. So I'd imagine you get way more top speed out of those twins, even though, the single is less drag. But
so general consensus then is the twins, despite the cost being more, is the better way to go for general performance, for all around.
Yeah, I'm going 300s. I mean, it ain't my pocket. It's not my budget. So if I had the budget, I would do the 300s over the single 450.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's move on from that one. We've been talking about these for a little bit, huh?
That's all right.
But yeah, let's talk about, where was it? This guy has a few questions. He says, question number 1, I guess it's not really phrased as a question. Decking options for all boats, advantages to each. Okay, what are the advantages to different decking options? What are the different decking options?
I mean, a personal preference and comfortability, I guess. What's the boat? I mean, if it's an offshore fishing boat, I mean, you don't really want carpet in there because, you're picking up a fish that's going to be flopping around, slinging blood all over inside the boat. So you don't want carpet that's going to absorb and, catch all that stuff.
He did mention even carpet like bass boats. I don't know much about bass boats, but...
bass fishing is a little different. You're not,
They've got carpet on the floor?
Yeah, most of them do.
Okay.
Most of them do. But, I think carpet in the bass boat's good. Carpet in
How's it different from an offshore? If you're fishing, it's still going to get all... slimy and...
slimy, yeah, but you're not,
bloody, are they not as bloody?
Yeah, you're not going to be throwing as much blood and having... I mean, when you pull, 25-pound mahi in the boat and then put it on the deck, the thing starts flopping around, slinging blood everywhere.
Right.
So, you want to be able to just run back there with the wash down, spray all that blood off and get it washed out of the boat, whereas...
Right.
If you had carpet back there, which would make SeaDeck kind of, so popular because it doesn't absorb stuff. It stains, but it's, a cushion under your feet. So it's not as rough on your feet. Mm-hmm. Whereas solid fiberglass is rough on your feet. Mm-hmm. So problem with SeaDeck is that it does wear over time, especially with the sun. It'll fade, and then also, hooks and weights and stuff like that. It'll start to chip it up, and then you'll get cuts in it. So it can look pretty ratty over if you use it a lot. I mean, it's pretty when it's brand new. Mm-hmm. So there's some advantages there. It's nice on your feet, and it looks good. And if you can keep it nice, it's nice. But if you use your boat a lot, like fishing, it'll get. It's definitely gonna get tore up.
Yeah, and it'll get pretty bloody. I mean,
wakeboard boats and ski boats, stuff like that. I mean, you want carpet in those. Pontoon boats, you probably want carpet. Yep, because you're not fishing. You're not you're not having blood and bait and stuff all on the boat. You're eating,
lounging,
drinking, lounging, hanging out with your friends. Mm-hmm. Barefoot most of the time. So I'd go with, you want carpet for the comfortability. I'm not,
He also, was wondering about salt versus freshwater maintenance. He says, I'm still replacing stuff on the bass boat from the Florida salt.
Yeah. Salt's rough. You can't really get away from it.
Mm-hmm. Change your anodes regularly.
Yep. Grease in salt away. Everything. Salt away.
Just be on top of it. Don't let it sit because salt will
eat it,
kill it.
Yeah. CRC. Mm-hmm. Keeping things lubed and using it. If you let it sit, even the salt air. Well, I mean, we come from the Keys, so this is a little bit different down there than it is. But I mean, salt's corrosive because down there, just the air, coming off the water, everything, you're on an island, so everything's surrounded by the salt water. So even the air has just got so much salt in it that if you let the boat sit, then it's just collecting and corroding and rusting, and you're going to be replacing that stuff for a long time. It's rough on it. There's no stopping it.
Freshwater, they're not as much maintenance required. Still probably, you should take care of the boat, wash it off, but generally I've never seen any corrosion issues on a freshwater boat.
Yeah, you can wax a boat twice a year in freshwater and it's, good. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of places down like, saltwater, you can wax a boat and need to wax it again in 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just peels it off.
Boat buying in the crazy industry lately. Rates suck. Yes, they do.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
What do you think about the industry lately?
I think it's starting to cool down finally. I mean, I think the massive inflation that people are finally feeling in their wallet is, bringing to realization that, you just can't print money like that. And no, the interest rates, they're trying to, the dollars, I mean, that's a whole topic in and of itself. The industry prices have gone so high that I really don't have an opinion on it, where things have gone up $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for parts. You used to be able to buy a power head for just the numbers. I mean, an L6 power head you can get for like $10,000. Now, if you wanted an L6 brand, you're talking $17,000. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just too much of a topic to get into. It's pretty much. That's a
whole. So what is our next question?
We got one. He says, "How do I apply for Yamaha and Mercury from Jamaica? Is it even possible?" Well, hopefully it's possible. I'd say it's the same process anywhere in the world, really. You just look for a dealer of that particular brand or both and get hired.
Yeah, that's about the process. I don't know. If you're trying to get like in with a brand, like I'm assuming he's talking about being a mechanic or something like that. Like, how do I get to, work with these engines and these brands? And then, you gotta get in with a dealer. I mean, for the most part,
that's if you want to, be able to go to school. They can send you off for training and stuff.
Yep. Have access to their software,
literature, all that stuff.
Yeah, service bulletins, service manuals, all that stuff. Yeah, you gotta kind of get linked up with a dealer and.
Yeah, no, you gotta. It's pretty much as simple as that. Just finding a dealer, get hired, and there you are. You've applied for Yamaha / Mercury. Hopefully, it is possible in Jamaica.
I'd imagine there's a dealer of some sort down there. I don't know.
There's got to be. There's boats. There's Yamahas and Mercuries. I guarantee it.
Yeah. So there's got to be some sort of a shop.
Yeah.
That's in that industry, because I don't know. I've never been in Jamaica either. So
I have. It's a pretty cool place.
Yeah.
Yeah, just cruise ship, like visiting the port or whatever. But but I don't remember seeing any dealers around. They probably don't want it around that area.
Yeah,
like, this is for tourism.
Yeah, this is where the Americans go.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think that's all the time we had for today. We've been talking for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. How long? Oh, yeah. We got about an hour in. So, all right. Yeah. If anybody has any more questions or you want to know, or have a discussion that you want us to cover, if we missed your, topic or whatever, your comment or question, then we're sorry, but we we just kind of pack them up as much as we can and then try and cover as much of them as we can. So hopefully we'll get to it next week, or if not, just ask us again in the comments or email us at askbab@bornagainboating.com, and we'll try and cover as many comments and topics as we can. Maybe get some guests on here and keep bringing more content and trying to interact with you guys.
All right. I think that'll do it.